Well, good morning. It's Pete with GCI Turf. Hope you're having a great day today. Have you ever wondered how pro lawn care companies manage weeds in beds? What I mean by bed is a natural area where you have pine needles, mulch, trees, shrubs, plants, anything like that. I call that a bedded area. Well, it's simple for us. Our guys are required to do this on weekly visits. They go out and of course they do their mowing and all that, edging, trimming, and they also have to hand pull weeds or undesired things in the beds at high traffic areas, meaning front door, back door, side door, patios, garage entrance, anywhere there's a high traffic area where the customer would come in and be able to visually see a weed. We call it a high traffic area. So they're required to hand pull those every week they come. That way we eliminate the chance of a customer walking into their home and seeing weeds. The bigger areas or the more vast areas, we chemically remove them using a backpack sprayer and glyphosate or Roundup. Something we also do is we like to spike the solution with a little bit of triclopyr and MSO. The MSO is going to help the material bond to the leaf surface and kind of burn in to the leaf, especially if it's like a waxy leaf surface on a plant. It'll burn into that better. And then we add a little triclopyr to it for reason I'll show you over here in the bedded area when we get over that way. My mix typically is anywhere from 2 to 4 ounces of Roundup per gallon, depending on the heat. If it's cooler temperature, of course I'll run the 4 ounce. If it's a warmer, hot day, we'll run the 2 ounce rate. MSO typically just a couple of ounces in a backpack sprayer, and the same for the triclopyr, just a couple of ounces. Now that's done when you need to physically spray the weed after it's come up. You're looking at it visually, and you apply in a post-emergent fashion, meaning after the weed is visible, you spray to take it out. I do want to make sure that you're aware that glyphosate or Roundup is a non-selective herbicide, meaning it does not have the ability to pick and choose what it wants to control. So if you get it on your bush, it's going to kill a portion of your bush, if not the whole bush. If you get it on your grass, your turf, it's going to kill a portion of your turf. If you get it on your grandmother's prize camellia bush that you planted 20 years ago, it's going to kill your grandmother's prized camellia bush that you planted 20 years ago. May not kill the whole thing, but it's going to kill a portion of it. So the point I'm getting at is you want to be very cautious with that, and you don't want any drift to happen. And drift is when you get off target and your solution sprays on something that you don't want it to be on. Another way you can control weeds in bedded areas is with pre-emergent. A lot of you use prodiamine. Prodiamine you can spray in bedded areas. Snapshot is another one that you can spread. That's a granular. It does a pretty good job. I use it in my bedded areas quite often. And for the weeds that are on the label, yeah, it keeps them in check pretty dang good. Of course, pre-emergents don't control every weed known to man. You need to make sure that if it's not on the label, chances are it's not going to control it. And right here, you're watching me put down the Snapshot, and of course that's a granular, needs to be watered in. I usually let it just sit there until it rains. A couple of things you want to make note of is once you apply this, if you get any on your hard surface areas, you want to just blow that back into the bedded area. Try not to get it in the grass. I'm not 100% sure if it would damage the turf or not. I've never seen it damage the turf, but I'm just not going to take that risk. So I always direct my blower in a way that it blows the material back into the bedded area. Something else you want to do is always apply this dry. Okay, meaning you want the bush or the plant to be physically dry to the touch. You don't want this material to stick to the leaf blade of any bush or plant. So after a rain, after a heavy morning dew, you want to stay away from that. You want to make sure you do this at a time of day when the leaf blade on the bush or plant is completely 100% dry. Something else you want to do is don't leave it sitting on the bush or the plant, okay? I go back around with a blower and just kind of blow throughout the bush and just kind of knock those little dry granulars off of the bush, off of the leaf surface. That way they make their way down to the ground. So another application method we'll do today is a foam applicator. It's a little handheld foam dispenser that you mix your Roundup in a foaming solution in a blue dye, and that way it acts as a marker. And of course, that completely takes drift out of the picture, and I typically use that when I have something growing up in the bush. Like if I have a weed inside this bush and it's coming up through it where I can see the top of it, I'll do that. I'll use that to actually foam on the material. That way it will stick just to that weed and it won't drip off and won't get on my plant that I don't want to take out or damage. And then of course we're going to walk around and spray beds today. It's been a little bit since I sprayed them. They're a little out of control as far as my standard goes, so we're going to get that knocked out and get that done, and then I'll be able to get back on my routine of doing this at least once a week, if not every other week at a bare minimum. So that means every time I mow, I edge my beds out every other mowing, and we'll talk about this in a minute. And I usually spray the beds the same day I edge out my beds. And the reason for that is so that when I'm spraying close to the edge, I don't get any material on my actual yard where the grass kind of grows over into the bedded area just a little bit. You don't want to do that. That'll leave a little dead spot on your edge. So all this stuff will be linked up in the description below, and I'll kind of detail out what's what, and I'll pin it to the top comment. That way you can check it out if you want to. And then we got this big boy right here. This is some kind of a vine or something that's been growing in this cryptomeria for quite some time. I just hadn't had time to deal with it, to be honest with you. So what I'm gonna do is get some of it out here. There's a main runner right there. Trying not to break it because I want it to come all out in one chunk. It is tangled up in there. Aha, there we go. Look at there. Look at all of that coming down. This is kind of a two-step project right here. I'm going to apply the solution to the stems and to the leaves and whatever I can get out here. And the reason I'm doing that versus just going in there and cutting it out and pulling it out is I actually want to see just how big of a weed or plant this stuff will take out. This will give me a good idea, because you know, the thing is, you might want to kill something like this and it may not be quite as easy to get to it, and you may not have the option to get down in there and cut it out. But rest assured, once I give this a couple of weeks to soak in, then I will for sure get over in there and cut it out, and I'll leave about 6 inches of the base sticking up, and then I'll foam the base as well right at the cut mark. That way that can soak down in there and get the root. It's not highly likely that doing this with this big of a plant is going to kill the entire plant. That's not likely to happen, but you never know. And this is why it's important not to spray liquid somewhere like this, because if you're using something like a Roundup, glyphosate, you want zero drift. And for those of you who are not familiar with drift, that's basically when the liquid solution in your sprayer goes off target, meaning this particular vine would be my target, and some of that liquid would spray past that and get on my cryptomeria back there, and that's not going to be good at all. I definitely do not want to replace a 45-foot tall cryptomeria. So this foamer is the ideal application for something like this. Right here in this node where you have an intersection, that's a great place to put this stuff at. Now don't get crazy pumping. I mean, you just barely touch it and you get material come out. And then you kind of use the end of the stick here, the applicator, the tube, to kind of rub it in to the branch. Oh yeah, that'll be a good one right there. I'm just going to be super curious to see how much of this actually dies off. Because I mean, there's just a little bit of chemical in here. And then the foamer, and then the rest is water. If you get one of these from me, of course the instructions come in the package with it and tell you how to mix it. Super simple to mix. Even using the foamer, I'm being super cautious watching that foam. One, I don't want to get it on myself. Two, I don't want to get it on my cryptomeria. And three, I don't want to leave any overhanging my turf right here, you know, in case some drops off or whatever. I don't want it to hit my turf, because you will for sure have a dead spot right there. Get this out of the way a little bit, because I am going to be mowing tomorrow, which that'll be nice and dry by tomorrow, so it won't be a big deal then. Now I like to use this drift guard when I'm working in between plants like this right here. That way I'm sure to keep my drift off of plants that I don't want to harm. One of my little tricks I like to do is, especially when I've got, like, you know, this is bluegrass right here that's made its way out of the yard, you know, it spreads, and I won't let go on, so my pine needles, you know, go straight up to the grass and it's not there. Well, one of my tricks I do is the day before I plan to spray my beds, I'll make sure it's timed with my bi-weekly bed edging. That way I've got a good, clean, crisp line along my bed, and this drift guard fits right down in that groove, and that assures me I won't get any of this herbicide on my actual grass. Because if you do that, guess what's going to happen to your actual grass? It's going to actually die and turn brown. The MSO in here really makes things shiny, and of course it's an adjuvant. It's going to help the material adhere and burn into the leaf blade. But now here's a good trick to use with this drift guard. See this one weed right here, kind of close to this laripe? Watch this, how I encapsulate the weed, and that way the material is no way possible for it to get on that laripe. And all I do is just give it one little quick tap, one little quick pump, and it's a done deal. And while I'm at it, I go ahead and hit the little ones that are in my cracks right here in my driveway. Now if you notice, I'm not saturating this. All I'm doing is just giving it a little tiny, barely pulling the trigger pump. All I want to do is get this material on the leaf blade, and that's it. I'm not trying to create a flood out here. And that way your spray goes a very, very long ways. Now, depending on your height, you may want to turn this at a different angle and point it back that way and then spray. I know if you're a shorter fella, then it would probably make more sense to do it like this, but if you're a taller guy, you probably want to turn it around and let it point away from you. It's just a little bit easier to fit down into the groove right there on the bed edges. This section right here is my nutsedge section. It just holds water over here, and that mainly comes from me detailing my vehicles in the driveway, and all the water kind of runs over this way right here, and so this kind of gets loaded with nutsedge. Now the triclopyr in this mix ain't gonna do anything for the nutsedge, but the Roundup will. It will be a little bit slower on nutsedge. It doesn't kill it super fast, but it will take it out. It usually takes a couple of weeks for it to really knock it down. Notice I'm being extremely cautious on where I walk, because I don't want to walk through this and then it stick to the bottom of my boot and then walk through my turf. That would be another bad day for the grass. Another tip, see how when I'm walking, I'm always holding the spray gun, lance, wand, whatever you want to call it, and the drift guard. See, I'm always holding it over the pine needles. That way, if by chance some of this drips off, it's not dripping in my grass. I also like to do this on a bright sunny day, because like I said earlier, you can really see where you've sprayed really good. You don't need a marker, you don't need any of that blue dye crap or any of that stuff in here. You just spray and you pay attention and you be focused. When we do this in beds at our customers' properties, there's no way in the world you're gonna catch me putting blue dye in it, because the customer's gonna come home, see all these blue spots in their pine needles or the mulch, and they're gonna raise Cain. So, you know, just get good at what you do, and then you don't have to have the blue dye as an indicator. And again, you can see that plenty good. It's shiny and glossy and just sticks out like a sore thumb. I can look at every single spot I've sprayed through here, just don't step in it. And back here on my patio, the same thing goes. I like to spray kind of backwards and not walk over my stuff. This is another good reason not to put blue dye, marking dye in your Roundup sprayer, is because you don't want blue dye all over your hard surfaces when you spray it. Trust me, with a little bit of practice, a little bit of patience, you will get good enough at doing this where you don't need any kind of blue dye or any kind of marker or an indicator or things like that. Just think it's one less thing you have to put in the tank, right? A few little weeds around this tree ring right here. Actually not weeds, they're little pieces of bluegrass that are spreading over into the bed. And here's another trick. Before I cross this turf right here, I'm gonna take this thing and tap it a little bit, knock all the loose liquid off of it. And I'm gonna turn it upside down, like that right there. Now I'm safe to cross over, and then I can go back to spraying. Another thing you want to do with this is make sure you do this when it's not windy outside. It's early on a Saturday morning. There's little to no breeze out here. That way I don't have to worry about any drift when I pick this thing up a little bit higher to spray like a wider area. All right, so here's a good example of why I have the triclopyr in here. If you read the label of triclopyr, basically the first sentence says for use in woody stem plants, okay? This right here is a woody stem plant, meaning the stem of it is actually made of wood, like a tree. It's actually a baby tree, and it's gonna eventually grow up to become a tree if I left it alone. I don't want it to be a tree. So that's why I use the triclopyr in there to enhance the effect on taking it out. Obviously the Roundup will. It's just a quicker kill with the triclopyr in the mix. Here's another good example right there. That's a little tiny baby maple tree. Probably come from that maple tree right there. And frequency on this, when I have time, and when I'm really dialed in and zoned into my yard, which has not been a lot here lately, been so busy, once a week, every time I mow, I'll just have my backpack ready to go, and I'll just make a quick lap around the beds, zap, 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 and that way they always stay clean. And of course, if you get behind on that, then the weeds are gonna tell on you, right? And that's why my beds are kind of got more weeds than they typically would have, just because it's probably been a month since I sprayed out here. As far as my equipment goes, I showed you the foamer. I prefer the Storm FlowZone Storm or the FlowZone Cyclone if I'm going to use a battery-powered backpack sprayer for Roundup applications, because the pump has the lower pressure. I don't want the higher pressure with this. I don't want to create drift and mist and that kind of thing. I want the material to hit the target and be done. So there you go. That's how pro lawn care companies manage weeds in beds. And of course, I can't speak for every pro lawn care company. I'm speaking for mine. I've been doing this 20 years, and since day one, that's pretty much the exact same way we've managed weeds in beds the entire time. It works fantastically. It's just a matter of you making or creating the time to actually do it on that week interval or bi-weekly interval. That way your weeds don't get out of control. Now, if I didn't have so much bedded area out here, it takes about 250 bales of pine needles to go over, my natural areas. So that's a lot. It would be a whole lot to hand pull. It would take hours to do that every week, and I don't have hours every week to do that. So it's a little bit quicker for me to walk around and spray with a backpack sprayer. If I had a small yard, and if I had small bedded areas, by all means, I'd probably never touch the Roundup. I'd never even buy it. I would just go out there and hand pull them. Every time when I'm mowing, I see a weed, pluck it out and throw it down and mow over it, or throw it in a baggie and throw it in a trash can or whatever. Once I get my beds cleaned up good like I did today, and I get back to mowing, if I see a weed that's kind of starting to get a little bigger than I want it to, I'll stop mowing and reach over there and grab it and pluck it out and stick it in my back pocket and throw it in the trash can. Or if it's a piece of bluegrass or something along the edge, I just throw it out in the yard and mow over it, and it's gone. So there's more than one ways to skin this cat. Just depends on which way you want to skin it, right? As always, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch. I'll check you later.